Welcome to the Consummate Athlete podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete podcast. Round 2 of our live podcasts from the Summit 700 race here in Collingwood over at the Blue Mountains. We did these live podcasts at VO2, just a really cool running triathlon store here in Collingwood. Solomon really helped us out, brought the whole event together.
Yep. If you watch the video, there's great backdrop with Solomon logos.
It was very
you can't
fancy.
see what I'm wearing right now because we're not filming our intro here, but I am wearing a lovely Solomon shirt to sort of wave that banner and say thank you for supporting the live podcast.
It's a white shirt. He's already stained it, but that's all right.
That's part of the reason we're not doing video.
Exactly. But anyway, this episode is a bit of a departure from our norm, but actually I am super excited about it. So this panel of 3 women, we had Erin Doucette, Sabrine Chanda, and Christina Blackley, all really cool runners from Barrie and Toronto. They're all doing really cool stuff in their communities with different running groups and crews. And what we really wanted to talk to them about is how to bring more women into trail running and sort of what some of the barriers are. And I think whether you're a cyclist or a runner, if you are, in a run club, a ride club, if you lead rides, if you lead runs, if you are an event organizer, if you're thinking about putting on an event, a clinic, anything like that, I think this is a really, really interesting, important episode to listen to, just to kind of hear about what are some of the barriers that women are facing, and how to think about hosting events and leading rides and leading runs that feel good for women to actually sign up for, to enjoy, to come back to.
Yeah, and just what I found it. I watched this one. You led it and did a great job of.
Thanks, dear.
That's not the word. What's the word for that? Facilitated. Moderated. You were a great moderator. A moderate moderator.
Thanks.
But I thought this really ranged from more of the big systems, complex systems, societal level stuff that there is no simple answer. There is no hack, right? Like these are things where like little improvements will help hopefully over time. We'll keep seeing things improve, but it's complex, right? It's not anyone's fault and everyone's fault, and we'll hopefully work through that over time. But I also like that there was some more practical things. The one that stuck out for me was when we ask on an intake form, often it'll be something like allergies, but it's just sort of asking about disabilities or illnesses or other like reservations people might have as an organizer, whether it's like a coach or an event organizer, that it might be something that's a little simpler to fix. A lot of these things aren't major, right? But just to see like what do people have. I think about that now more often when we're thinking about things like washrooms and things like this as well, right? That it's like to try and minimize some of the reasons someone might not participate. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so I think there's such a good combination, like you said, of practical and then kind of just going over these kind of wider, broader societal issues that women are facing, which I think we need both of those in order to actually make improvements, because this has been a really big topic of discussion for years now. It feels like it's really heating up right now. How do we make running, riding, endurance sport in general more accessible to all women? And I think that's obviously a really tricky question. So hopefully we go a little bit towards answering it, or at least hopefully making a couple of people think about, okay, maybe I can add even just the fact that we're going to have a no drop ride, or we're going to set the paces really clearly so that people actually know what they're getting into. We're going to specify that no runner is going to be left alone on the trail. All of that kind of stuff that a lot of us just don't really think about when we are kind of putting together even a friendly ride or run, right? Like a lot of these things we're talking about trail groups and clubs, but I think even I don't really run with any specific club, but, our friends are always bringing out new people and stuff like that. And it makes me wonder, are there a lot of people that would actually kind of jump in with some of my group runs that I end up on if they had more information, if we made it very clear, we're not going to leave anyone in the woods?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because it's, you try and help people out as best you can. It occurred to me that the run group we jumped in with while we were down in not Bentonville, where were we? In
Brevard, North Carolina.
Another B word, another great place. The run group, there was great, very supportive, all levels of athletes, and they actually had a walking. They might have run walk a little bit, but like certainly they were walking, big chunks of it. And so that allowed someone who was injured or resting for a race or just new, they were walking. And I assume there was not dropping on that. I don't know, how, but like, at least there was a walk option where you might even choose to do little runs during that or something, and then, walk back to the group or something. And that, would be what a great way to start into running.
For sure. And that group was so unofficial and so casual.
So organized. And I think the secret was they kept the route the same, and it was simple. It was like not out and back, but like could be out and back. It was like a lollipop, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
And there were like lots of little cuts that you could just like cross over and kind of come back with the people who, like, as you're running out, you could have crossed a bridge and then jumped in at the people who are already on their way back if you wanted to keep it shorter.
Sure.
So yeah, like that kind of thing, I think does really make for easier ease of joining, because normally we're not really like run club people to begin with.
Sure.
So for us to jump into something like that is a testament to how well they put it together.
For sure. Yeah, and then the other one that occurred to me was, at a lot of the stage races now, they're having people who like are sweeping, but like are maybe sweeping in different parts of the race, but then also are just equipped to help with first aid or mechanical type stuff, just have tons of tools and backpacks. And I know that's very well received, and some people end up just riding with the sweepers, a lot of the weekend, and it's okay, now you have someone to ride with. And that to me is like another one that's probably pretty fun for people who are into first aiding and stuff as well, and
sure,
helping. Like, I know that I get really jazzed when I can like help someone get rolling again technically. So yeah, I don't know, those are two random things that occurred to me. But
no, lots of really interesting thoughts coming out of this episode. But
cool.
without further ado,
let's let the women speak of it.
Yes, and again, we said it on the last podcast, apologies for any background noise. This live podcast was taking place during packet pickup, so to be clear, people weren't necessarily like being rude in the background. They were just getting their packets for the race, unaware that there was a podcast going on. So don't judge our noise too harshly. And if we do more of these in the future, and we really like to, I think we will make sure that we are doing it in a more private space for sure next time. So lots of learning during our first real like live event podcast. All right, hope you enjoy this conversation with Erin, Sabrine, and Christina. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Everybody who's listening on the live YouTube stream. Very exciting. And I'm super excited about Summit 700 tomorrow. Super passionate about trail running. It's a lot of what we talk about on the Consummate Athlete podcast. And while we are kind of talking about like how to get more women into trail running and some of like the issues facing women in trail running, I do want to kind of like first and foremost say that running, spending time in nature, undeniably a very good, important, positive thing, even though we are talking about some of the barriers. So that's part of why we have these discussions. So, trail running. There are millions of trail runners worldwide right now. 77% of them are men, 23% are women. The percentage of women trail runners is actually on the rise. That number used to be 17%. And actually Canada is the country with the third most female trail racers. So that's actually really awesome, but it's only 39%. And a big part of what we're talking about today is that, according to a study from Adidas, 92% of women express safety concerns. They're nervous about running, whether it's alone, whether it's with a group they don't know, whether it's at night or early in the morning. And, we're kind of hoping to be able to change that, and it's happening very slowly. And talking about that is a big part of how we change that and get more women into running and make it more accessible, and that's a lot of what we're talking about tonight. So, without further ado, I'm going to have our lovely panelists give us a quick intro about them. So we're just going to kind of go through and just talk about what got you into running and sort of what your relationship with running is now. So Sabrine, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sabrine Chanda. I wrote a little something. I'm a university student at University of Toronto. I'm currently studying chemistry. I've been an athlete all my life, played a lot of different sports, not particularly well. I just love sports, and so I played pretty much everything I can. I'm also deaf and hearing impaired. I'm deaf on my left side and hearing impaired on my right side. And so recently in the past 2 years, been on a journey of relearning a lot of the sports that I used to play that used to come very easily to me. There's a lot of balance problems that come with hearing loss, and it's been a journey of just completely rediscovering what my body can do, and my relationship with running has changed a lot because of that. So along this journey, I've also been learning a lot more about all of the different accessibility issues that exist in sports. So very much a student in this space, and I'm just happy to be here and share my experience.
Awesome. And Christina?
Hello, I'm Christina Blackley. I got into running, well, actually, can you louder? Okay. So I've always played sports growing up, and I hated running, so I never thought I'd become a runner. But my personal trainer actually got me into it, and kept on hounding me to join the Barry running room group. And so I finally did. I joined the group, did a clinic, and met a lot of wonderful friends through that. And then they started to tell me about trail running, and I thought, okay, I'll try it out. And fell in love with it. But with trail running, it was a bit more challenging because I kept on getting injured with my ankles being so weak for the trails. But I kept on, and I then, after a few years of running on with the running room, I went and ran with the Barry Run Ninjas back in 2015, and the first run I did with them was on the trail too, and had a great time. And I really enjoyed that group as well, and I kept running with them, and now I'm one of their run leaders. And on Wednesday nights we run on the trails, and we'll switch up the routes every week, and so we. Anyways, yeah. So I just kept running with them, and I continue running on roads and trails, and that's where I am now. So yeah.
I love it. And you're doing the 21K tomorrow.
I'm doing 21. Yep, God willing, I'll stay standing.
You'll be great. You'll be great. And Erin, who would be doing the race tomorrow were it not for her toes.
And this is on. You can hear me okay? Hi, I'm Erin Doucette. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a lifelong runner. I started running when I was in elementary school, and I've always loved running, but I've only more recently discovered trails during the pandemic. I happened to be training online for a job, and I met a colleague through work, and she ran with the Stilltown Athletic Club in Hamilton, and I was just like, this club you have is so amazing. Like, their focus is very much about inclusion and welcoming people, and I thought, we don't have something like that in Toronto quite with those values very forefront. So she said, well, maybe you should start a run club. So I started a chapter of Stack in Toronto called StackTO. Anywho, the name became a bit confusing, and people had trouble. They would always be asking, are you in Hamilton or are you in Toronto? So Stack existed for a little bit in Toronto, and then as of January, my Tuesday group, which is a 5 to 7K, it's very pace inclusive. We've we had a good merger with Toronto Trail Runners, and so now I run under the Toronto Trail Runners banner, and I lead a run group every Tuesday, and then I also have a group that I started last year called the Trail Collective, and our main focus is around specifically creating space for people to be new in trail running, and we've ran some clinics. We had one in the fall for women, non-binary and gender diverse runners, and then we ran one in the spring, open to anybody, but again, just as a very much a beginner, welcoming, very much like, you're new to trails, how do we get people on trails, and encourage them to maybe try a race or go out to another run club. And so, yeah, it's just become like a labor of love.
I love it. I love it. And I'm going to actually have you keep the mic because you mentioned these clinics. And, you know, we know that more women are coming to running. The numbers are going up. But having done these clinics, having worked with these newer runners, like you must have some insight into why are women like nervous about coming out to these group runs or like getting started running?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. And I think like you flagged the issue of safety. And I think if we expand on that, like there's your physical safety, but there's also like your psychological safety, and showing up in a group and feeling like you belong and like you're welcome is one thing. And that there is something to be said about sort of quote unquote infinity spaces, like spaces where you're sort of with your own people and you can really feel like there's an understanding of what your needs are. So we definitely found that with the clinic. Like it's kind of like anything, like you have a dream, a hope, you put it out there and you're like, I don't know, someone gonna like be into this. And like we had a really amazing turnout, and then people were like, oh, when are you doing it again? And when's the next one going to be? And then the most amazing thing was that two amazing things happened. You started to see the people who participated in those clinics signing up for races and coming out to other run clubs, but then also saying, we really love this. How can we be a part of this? And the Trail Collective truly is a collective. It's like my voice is one voice. So we had a bunch of people. So we're expanding and growing. And then that way you get like truly that diversity, because again, like I occupy one space, and it's important to have people who, you know, occupy a lot of different social spaces and bring those issues and that awareness, and then help, you know, create space that really is truly welcoming and inclusive.
I love that. And I do think with clinics, what we've always seen, you know, we do more cycling clinics, but we've always found the coolest part about events like this, events like that, is really afterwards you have the women talking to each other and exchanging numbers and like following each other on Strava and Instagram, and then they start training together. They go out for a run, they go out for a ride, and I think those connections are like what makes hosting these events like so important. And Christina, you also host runs for newbie runners. So talk to me, what nerves do they have? Like what are they nervous about when they come into your run group?
Yeah, well, a lot of them are, some of them are not used to running, so, and they're intimidated by, oh, I'm not fast enough, or I can't keep up. So the thing is that the lady who, one of the ninjas who leads it, her name is Alicia, and she being kind of running at her own pace, she's able to also relate to these ladies who are also new to running, and so together as a team, we welcome people who come in, let them know that it's okay, that they can. They're not the fastest, and we're all at a different pace, but we all try and support each other. And when they come to the group, we, the one thing we do is we invite them with a smile. We encourage them to do what they can to run at their pace and run it where they can, and let's see, with our run group, one of them, our motto is leave no one behind. So let's say we're running with a group, and once there's a few people who may be faster than the rest of us, they'll come back and they'll pick us up during the run. So that's where there's always someone who's going to be coming back to pick up the slower ones, and that's great because we all trying to pick each other up and stick together.
That's such a good hack that I don't think enough run clubs do. Oh, yeah. And that's something I saw with high school cross country when I was coaching it a few years ago. I loved that because it was like the fast runners had to loop back and like then run with the slower runners. And it was great. It makes so much sense. And I don't know why we don't do that as adults more often. Yeah. And Sabrine, you mentioned you did all different, like you've done all of the different kind of track, cross country, all of that stuff. Like, what's your take? Like, how do we get more women into any of these?
I think So one of my biggest hesitations with running was always the fear of being slow. Growing up and throughout middle school, throughout high school, I was never one of the fastest runners, and I never quite understood why. And I realized, especially in the past couple of years, a lot of what I've read about how hearing loss impacts running, there's a really big fear that I had with going at a certain speed, because at that speed, I'm afraid of my balance and falling down. And I've had a lot of pretty bad crashes with running, just reaching a certain speed and just completely losing my balance, my vision goes, and I just fall down. So I hesitated a lot with running in groups. It was part of the fear of running fast, the fear of keeping up with people, falling behind. And this past winter, I joined the Arc'teryx Fun Club that they had out of the Queen Street store that I used to work at. And there was such an emphasis on all the different paces and how nobody, again, echoing that point, nobody's left behind. And it took at least a month for me to be convinced to actually join the run club, because I kept thinking, I know they say nobody's left behind, but what about a 7-minute pace, an 8-minute pace, a 9-minute pace, where for somebody who's taller than me, that's them walking, but that's me running at my absolute maximum. And so when I finally took that chance and joined that club, I met so many other people who also run slower, and then I started to be able to break a lot of those barriers with speed. So a big part of it is sometimes you really just need that reminder and reassurance and that community to exist so that you can start to step into it even before you're actually a part of it. Just seeing that happen and seeing all of those different paces and different abilities be represented, and then you start to imagine yourself to be a part of that.
I love that. Yeah, every pace is a great pace. I think that's what we all need to really remember. And I mean, honestly, like the thing that I've realized more and more as I've watched more and more races is like the people who are running the slowest paces, they are working the hardest. Like I respect them so much more than the people who are out there winning the race, because they're out for, double the time. They are like giving it their all. And it's always just like so cool to watch. I'd rather watch the back of the pack any day. Okay. Erin, let's get into like the, topic that's really been big on Instagram this week. There's been a lot of discussion after Western States, a lot of kind of stuff around this idea of when we talk about bringing more women into running, we tend to really focus on cisgendered, white, non-disabled, middle-class women. It's been coming up a lot, and without putting anyone on blast, let's talk about why intersectionality, when we talk about women in running, is just so important and absolutely cannot be ignored as we're trying to tackle the topic of how we bring more women into the sport.
Yeah, and I mean, like that could probably be like 5 podcasts. So
I know,
I'm gonna like do intersectionality justice and like being respectful of. I want to hear so much from my other panelists, but so very quickly, like just if anyone's like, I hear this term used a lot, like what is it? What is it? Like so just. Or a refresher, intersectionality is a term that was coined back in 1989 by civil rights activists and leading scholar on critical race theory, Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. Essentially, intersectionality is where we assess like our social identities that we inhabit and how that sort of comes up against systems of oppression, discrimination, and dominance, right? So you're like, well, what does that have to do with trail running? Well, trail running doesn't exist in a bubble. It exists in a society that already has these social constructs and these, this system that is not always set up to be fair to everybody. So when we talk about getting more women into running, women is not a monolith. We can't just talk about one type of woman. We have to assess from an intersectional point of view and bring that lens, because a Black woman is going to have different needs and face discrimination in a different way than I am as a white woman, middle class. We've heard Sabrine talk about her experience with accessibility, and that's important, right? Somebody who has a hearing loss is going to access the trails differently than me as someone who doesn't have a hearing impairment. So when they do studies, when they look at this and they ignore that, or they say, well, and this is kind of what happened, and not to like, but it is the issue that sparked the debate, was that they kind of made that be a second tier or a next step. And that's really problematic, because what does that say to you then if you're a Black woman trail runner, if you're a trans woman trail runner, if you're queer, if you have accessibility issues? It's saying right now we're going to put the emphasis on these particular women and how do we get them to toe the line. We'll talk about you and look about your issues later. And that is the absolute opposite of inclusion. And inclusion, if you're going to walk it or run it, you're going to talk it, you got to really put your legs to it. And that's the thing that's so key. And that's why it matters, because we started off by saying trail running is pretty much, in my opinion, the dopest sport. So I'm it's the best and I want more people to come to it. But if I'm just looking out for people who look like me, then I'm not doing my part. And so that's the hubbub. And I props to Allison Mariella Desir. I don't know how she wakes up every morning. She must be exhausted. But she's really out there doing a lot of the work. But it shouldn't be up to our Black sisters to do the work, because then we do kind of continue to mitigate, perpetuate that racist trope of the help. I mean, it is up to white women to step up and really bring an intersectional lens.
100%, and very well done on putting that into a lovely little nutshell and proving the fact that one can have this conversation within a women in trail running thing and not have it need to be a whole other episode that we're going to do later. Yeah, we're doing it now. So yeah, I mean, just such an important thing. And I mean, it's funny because we kind of started to see this conversation even play out a month ago. I don't know how many people saw the meme about which would you rather run into in the woods, a bear or a man? And overwhelmingly, women were like, bear, 100% bear. And you know what? Frankly, I completely agree. That to me is actually the biggest barrier to trail running, is the feeling of a lack of safety, especially when you're in trail systems that you don't know. You're not really sure where exactly you are or who's going to be on the trail or what's going to be on the trail. I mean, I don't want to run into a bear. Let's also be clear on that. Would prefer not running into anything. But yeah, then I start thinking about, middle-class white woman. How would I feel, as a Black woman or a younger woman, an older woman? There are so many things that I now think about that I hadn't really before. So I think just having these conversations is probably step number one of very many toward helping bridge this gap. And then Sabrine,
and I'll just say that just really quickly, that speaks to the psychological safety, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. If you're addressing those issues, then people are going to feel safer psychologically to come into these spaces. If you are gatekeeping the spaces, then it's not a safe space, because what's safe for me is going to be different that's safe for a woman who inhabits those different social identities.
Absolutely. And that's where that pace discussion that we were having there comes in too, right? If you're worried you're going to be dropped on the run and be alone in the woods, that's a very different scenario than you're out running with a group of people that are going to make sure you get out of the woods. Are we doing a head count? Am I going to get left on this trail not knowing where I'm going? Because I've definitely been in run groups or more biking groups with guys where that has, in fact, happened, and I have gotten lost in trail networks. So, the pace thing matters. And then, Sabrine, you mentioned how the hearing loss had really impacted your balance. But I imagine for a lot of coaches growing up, or even now, people wouldn't necessarily think of that, or even take that into consideration when they're running with you. So, how can coaches and run leaders better take disabilities into account, especially ones that aren't maybe quite as obvious on the surface?
One of the really big parts of it is communication. So I find a lot of times in different types of group events I've been in, whether it's a bike group or a run group, a team sport, communication is more than just speaking to somebody and making sure they heard what you said, making sure they understood what you said. It's also about knowing what are ways that you can establish a back and forth platform of communication for somebody to share what their experiences are, and then to do that in a way where I'm able to share what I'm struggling with without being diminished as an athlete, without my abilities being diminished, without being put into a box of being a slow runner or a fast runner, or all of these different kinds of boxes that we get put into. So communication, I think that what precedes the communication is being open to being taught. that's a big thing. So opportunities like this, where as a first-hand person living this experience, as someone with, or an athlete with a disability, having that chance to share my experience, that's one of the biggest parts of opening up, almost having people confront what they don't know. I've had so many people tell me that they never knew hearing loss impacts your balance. And then when I go further and I explain that how I counter that balance problem is by, in the gym, just training the left side of my body way more intensely than the right side of my body to compensate for the balance, and then doing vision activities that sharpen your vision and sharpen your brain's connection with your vision, because without my hearing, what I'm using for balance is my vision. So all of these different small things that are a part of it, that even I didn't know these things before I had this surgery. And so I'm also in that state of learning. And so it's this entire cycle where you need to have the opportunity to learn, to show people, to be asked questions, and do it in a way where you also want to have other people be comfortable asking you questions. That's something I always really try to encourage people, is there's no dumb question. There's the first step in creating an inclusive space with equitable accessibility to everybody is being brave enough to ask questions, and also knowing how to ask questions, knowing how to have these conversations. So spaces like this is just so important for that.
I love that. And to that point, if someone is, there's a lot of like run leaders and run coaches and stuff who are either here tonight or listening to this, what's the best way for them to even ask, is it on like a membership, like sign up? Should they have like a section where people can actually like add, okay, here's, the issues that I have? Like, is that helpful? Is that something they should be doing?
I think, I found a lot of times that anytime I've signed up for an event and there'll be some simple question, you give your name, your number, your info. There's never a spot to communicate, I'll need cue cards, or I'll need captions for any video content, or I'll need a specific run partner. If a run club is at night, a lot of times I can't run it because I cannot run at night because of my balance problem. So just the opportunity to even share some of those things, which a lot of times I don't see. And so there's been events where I've been to where I'm running in circles trying to find the organizer and communicate that I just need this small thing and that small thing, and it'll allow me to share what I can share to a space. So even just from the start, giving people a voice and taking a step back, letting people speak for themselves, advocate for themselves, but not in a way where they're being made to feel that they have to do all the work, right? So I'm able to share what I need, and then I'm able to have that trust that the organization will bring that to fruition.
Love that. And that's such a simple thing that people can do. Like that does not take much effort to add that question and leave that box open. I love it. Okay, Christina, I want to come to you and I want to talk about how to make trail running fun for new runners. So a woman comes and she's like, I've hated running in the past. I'm here. I'm going to give this a try, but I'm probably not going to like it. I can tell you right now. How do you convince her otherwise?
Strap her to my back. No, I'm kidding. As always, I will introduce myself and get to know her, and welcome her with a smile and make her feel at ease that we're here to have fun. It's just a trail run. It's not like we're trying to compete for the Olympics or anything. But and then when it's amazing that we have the Art Bluffs in Barrie, and a lot of people haven't been in the forest, in that forest, and the thing is that it's right in the city, and the trail system is pretty amazing. I mean, you could run about 15 to 20 kilometers in there easy, and it's just so magical at times when we get in there and the lights come through the trees. It's a beautiful place to be in, and the colors are amazing. So once people get onto the trails, it's like nature that does the job for me. I mean, they just fall in love with the area. So the thing is that if they're new to trail running, will have someone stay behind and run with them so that they don't get lost and they're not going to feel like they're alone in that place, and giving them support that way, and making it fun too. So while we're running, we'll chat, we'll have a conversation, get to know each other. That way they're not really thinking too much about running, and more about just being in the moment and having fun that way. And it's a bit of a challenge too, because it's not flat in that trail system. It's quite hilly, so we'll take breaks here and there too to allow for them to so that they're not keeled over in the forest and have to bring in the EMS. But it's so we try to adjust for people who are new to trail running.
Okay, the break thing is probably the most important thing that anyone could ever say when it comes to during group trail runs or rides or anything. The actually stopping and taking a break and not just waiting for the slowest person to catch up and then starting again.
Yeah.
Give them a minute. I feel like so many more women and men would actually stay in run groups if they actually stopped for breaks and truly stopped for the person at the back more often.
That's true.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, practical advice time. How are each of us thinking about safety when we're out running? Erin, do you want to kick this one off?
So me personally?
Yeah. Well, and even for you and your groups, because you're leading a lot of women who have that question.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's such a tricky one, I think, because it's one of those things where I get mad because I'm it shouldn't be my responsibility. Stop doing bad things to women when we're out running. Why is that my problem solved? But okay, yeah. So some practical ones, obviously, I try to really know my routes. I do let people know where I'm gonna if I'm running alone. I do often run with my dog. She's pretty great. So, and she doesn't take any crap. So, but some more subtle things I think that I've learned as you work with people is just I think some of these things around I have kind of a joke, zero drop is for shoes, not for run clubs, right? So I think that's a really, really big one. I think also just subtle things even the way we talk about things, with the Trail Collective, for example, we were really careful about how we used words. We even put out information that we asked people to read before coming to our events that really we don't want people talking about bodies, other people's bodies. We don't want even language fast or slower sometimes. We tried to use sexy pace, party pace, we're just come and run as you are, right? Those kinds of things. So I think that sort of speaks again to the psychological piece. I have gone as far as organizing a safety event with this really cool woman who does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So she taught us some some sort of stuff that can help you if you're grabbed by your ponytail, for example, we don't want to think about those things, but they are things that can happen, and it was at a time when there were a few incidents on the trails in Toronto and in Hamilton. I also do have a personal alarm. I haven't had to use it. It's lived in my vest for a long time, but so those are a few things. I think even Strava has a beacon you can put on. So those are some tips.
I love that. It's funny. I actually did an article for Canadian Cycling last fall where I interviewed, I think it was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor about some of those things. And let me tell you, when she was explaining to me the ponytail and how you put the hand on where they have their hand on your ponytail and you do this. It was the most terrifying but also empowering session that I've ever had with a source for an article. That's for sure. Christina, what about you?
How to make the
How do you feel?
safe?
Yeah, how do you feel safe on the trail? What are you doing?
Well, when I first started trail running, I would go with friends, and that way I would learn what to be aware of, and that got me more comfortable running in the forest and on the trails. And also, what was I going to say? It's like Erin said, look at the map, know your route. Obviously, sometimes it's hard to understand the map, but once you get in there, but at least look at the map, and also carry your phone, has GPS. You know, you can figure out how to get back out of the trails. And I think for me, I've always had a problem with dogs. I don't know why. They like me and they come after me, and I don't know how to deal with dogs. I should learn, but so I try to avoid them.
Too likable. That's your problem.
Yeah, I guess so. They come. So I have been nipped by dogs, and on the Bruce Trail. Another time on the Bruce Trail, there was I don't know if it was a pit bull. He came after me, and I just had to pause and stare and just stare him down and just wait until the owner came to call it back. But I was ready to fight back if I had to, or grab a stick. You know, if you need to defend yourself, at least grab a stick and just be ready for it.
Absolutely. Sabrine, what about you?
So one thing I always do is when it's starting to get dark, I'm just on FaceTime with a friend, and there's been times where I'll be really in the mood to run, and it'll be maybe 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 a.m., sometimes in the summer when, you just can't sleep and you want to go outside and do something. So I'll just be on FaceTime with a friend while I'm running. I always want to be as visible and loud as possible at night, not just so that everyone around me can see, but also if I need help, I can be easily seen and identified. I used to, when I first moved to downtown Toronto, it was quite a big change for me, especially at night. The area that I lived in wasn't very safe, and so one thing I would do was walk around with my keys in my hand in case of anything. So a lot of it for me now is really about just not being by myself. I always have somebody with me. I always have someone have my location. I let somebody know what I'm doing. I at night always just try to be with somebody, get them home, get myself home, and just make sure that someone always knows where I am at all times, because that can prevent so much.
100%, yeah. Yeah, and I'll just add, I think the big thing that I was told when I was doing this article about safety was just awareness. And I mean, it's so easy with phones, with headphones, to just, honestly, even just trail running, right? You're on the trail, you're having an amazing time. You're just paying attention to what's in front of you. And you're not really paying attention to what's kind of a ways up, or what's coming behind you, or to the side if you're on a trail that's crossing. And when she said most things could probably be avoided if you were just a bit more aware and okay, there's someone coming that way, cool, I'm gonna go right now instead of continuing on this trail. Makes such a big difference. Actually, when I was in Florida trail running last winter, I ran up behind actually a huge dude, and it was terrifying for me because I was gonna have to run around him. And I'm coming up behind him, on your left, and he didn't move. So finally I went super wide around him. He shrieked like a tea kettle, jumped 10 feet in the air, hand on his heart, just oh my God. I was sorry. Kept running really, really fast. But he's whew, that dude doesn't even think about being aware. That dude has nothing to worry about. Whereas I'm just constantly paying attention, scanning my environment. So also I felt really good scaring the crap out of him, to be totally honest. Okay, last question I want to touch on is really just if people here want more women to come into trail running, what is our best advice for getting more women out on the trails? And I know we've kind of touched on a lot of these points, but I really want to just drive them home. All right, who wants to go first?
Christina looks like she does.
No.
Okay. It's coming to you next. I'll just say really quickly, I think more podcasts like this, right? More talking about the issue, 100%. But I think when it comes to race, I think it comes to anybody who's organizing. So you're organizing a run club, you're organizing a race. You got to do it again with people in mind, and ask the people. Even Sabrine was saying, when people ask questions, how many times do you register for a work event and they ask for your accessibility issues? Why can't race directors do that? Why, so ask, truly listen, and then just implement them, because they're generally not ever that difficult to do. It's quick answer.
Love it. And I think to add to the race director, race organization thing is also, I've seen a couple of races lately, especially for trail running, where they've actually brought buses from the city. So they actually made it more accessible to folks from the city who don't have transportation. And that's, how we bring more people into trail running is like literally how do we get them physically to the trails. So that's definitely a huge one. Yeah. All right, Christina, your turn.
All right, thanks. For me, what got me into trail running was watching also, not also being with friends who do trail running, but also watching on YouTube all these amazing female athletes doing it. And they look so cool, so I want to be like them. So that's why I love it so much too. Courtney Dauwalter and Sally McRae and as Emily. But they're all amazing, strong women. And so with that too, it'd be great to have more women trail running groups in each city,
100%. Yeah, that's where it comes down to that visibility thing, right? Like we can't be what we can't see, and that goes for kind of like we're saying, women are not a monolith. Like it's not just there's like one type of trail running woman. So yeah, having more and more visibility of the women who are out there currently on the trails, I think is a huge help. Yeah. All right, Sabrine, you're up.
I think what jumps out for me with getting more women into trail running and running in general is cost is a big thing. So one thing that I mentioned just a little while earlier, I've been using the same pair of running shoes for 11 years. They were, I believe, $30 or $40. This was a decade ago, and I've just been using that one pair of shoes. I just pick a cotton t-shirt and I go run in it. I don't have expensive gear, nothing like that for running. And sometimes with big run groups, a barrier can be you see everyone in their fancy shiny running outfit. They've got 15 different running outfits, and then you think, okay, to run fast I need this pair of shoes that will propel me in this way, and it has a carbon plate and all of these things. And just simplifying it, making it something where you like to move your body, here's a group you can do it with, and you go for a run, and that's it, and everybody's welcome.
I love that, and I think that's actually even something that run leaders can take into account, and maybe show up to some of the runs not wearing the super expensive labeled everything. Like wear the old shoes, wear the cotton t-shirt, and like make it feel more welcoming, especially for beginner run groups, because you're totally right. Like if you're the only one there in the plain t-shirt and like you're dating myself here, Sophie gym shorts with the rolled over a couple times, like it feels awkward when everyone else is in hundreds of dollars of stuff. And you're exactly right. Like running, we always say like, oh, running's so inexpensive, like you just need shoes, like put on your shoes and you go. And if anyone's looked at shoe prices lately, not a thing.
And to that point as well, there was something that inspired me really recently. I saw a story about a woman who ran an ultra marathon in sandals and a dress. And there's just all these examples that I see that always get me into sports, of people accessing the sport regardless of what they have at their disposal, and just focusing on you have your body, you have the ability to move, and that is your ticket into it.
So good. Love it. Okay, before we wrap up, do you all want to share just where everyone can find you, follow you if they feel so inclined? If you want to share. Sabrine, we'll start with you.
You can mostly find me in person doing a lot of things. I work at the Arc'teryx store that's on Bloor Street in Toronto. I'm not really active on social media, but if you come to the Bloor Street store, I'm very happy to help and talk about every sport that everyone likes to do.
Love it.
Okay, you can find me in Barrie with the Barrie Run Ninjas. They're on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm on Instagram and social media too, and that's Christine Blackley, illustrator. But if you guys are ever in Barrie and want to join the group, we run on Mondays, Thursdays are the newbie groups, and Wednesdays the trail running group, and Saturday is the road running group. So you can find us on Facebook or Instagram if you feel like.
So I'm on Instagram. Just me myself. I'm also with Toronto Trail Runners, so you can follow Toronto Trail Runners. You can follow. We're on Facebook as well, and we have our own website. So we've got really good social media. And then there's the Trail Collective as well, which we're just on Instagram. So that's Trail Collective. Yep, it's the Trail Collective.
We'll link in the show
What is my handle? The Trail Collective. We're on Instagram. Come check us out. We don't have anything currently planned, but we're always scheming and planning. I run Tuesdays though with Toronto Trail Runners. I lead the Tuesday group, and we have a Wednesday group, and we do things on the weekends, and we're always having something fun. Like we're always organizing something fun. So definitely, if you're in Toronto, anytime, come check us out.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much. This was so much fun, and hopefully this gets a lot more women into trail running. All right, let's give it up. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.